American Sign Language teaching on the behalf of the deaf community. Courses in American Sign Language are increasingly being offered in high schools and colleges across the nation to meet foreign language requirements. ASL is the primary language for deaf Americans. Many deaf Americans are thrilled about the increased interest the hearing community has in learning ASL because this leads to the communication barriers being broken daily. According to the statistics of language enrollments at U.S. colleges, the number of ASL enrollment has increased rapidly. From 1998 to 2002, ASL enrollment has increased 432.2%. From 2002 to 2006, ASL enrollment continued to increase with a growth of 29.7%. From 2006 to 2009, continued growth was recorded with an increase of 16.4%. As of 2009, ASL is the fourth most popular foreign language course being offered at colleges and universities across the U.S. An increased number of students have chosen to pursue a career in ASL interpreting. As high school and colleges started offering ASL courses, opportunities started to open for deaf people because ASL teaching jobs become widely available. With time, the number of hearing people with knowledge and expertise in ASL increased. This has resulted in an increase of ASL interpreters benefiting the deaf community. Although it definitely has its benefits, the fact that ASL is increasingly popular has brought some unexpected problems as well. With many hearing people becoming quite skilled in ASL, many of them are obtaining ASL teaching jobs traditionally held by deaf people. Despite the fact that many deaf ASL instructors are masters in ASL, they are often replaced by hearing people, with many of whom are not as fluent in ASL and the deaf culture. In the deaf community, it is often felt that deaf applicants for ASL teaching positions are being passed over in favor of hearing people. This is despite their ASL skills and knowledge being inferior to that of deaf persons in many cases. As more and more hearing people work as ASL instructors, opportunities for deaf American citizens with a desire to teach ASL are becoming increasingly difficult to obtain. It should come to no surprise to anyone that throughout history, deaf people have had difficulties finding jobs because of their communication barriers. We have made great strides over the past 2 decades, seeing an increase in the employment opportunities for deaf people because of the Americans with Disability Act. At the Conference of Milan in 1880, most deaf people were not able to teach in deaf schools because they had prohibited the use of sign language, forcing them instead to use the oral method. After the Babbage Report in 1965 stated that the oral method has failed significantly, sign language made a comeback in the deaf schools. Deaf individuals were again given opportunities to teach in their native language. During a large part of the last century, many deaf individuals worked for printing companies in very noisy environments. With time and advancements in technology, the number of deaf people working in printing companies has decreased. Opportunities for employment have become difficult once again for many deaf individuals. We're seeing the same thing with the United States Postal Service, where many deaf people were able to find employment only to find themselves out of a job because of the advancements in technology. While hearing people with fluency in ASL are not responsible for the decreased opportunities for deaf people in the printing companies and the USPS, we feel it is imperative to point out the fact that there are a large number of perfectly capable deaf individuals who struggle to find jobs in the ASL teaching field because hearing people are often deemed more qualified, or it is seen as a convenient solution to a problem of communicating with a deaf ASL instructor. Although they may not realize it, many hearing ASL users are taking job opportunities away from the deaf community. Do hearing ASL instructors sign as well as or better than deaf ASL teachers? The simple truth is that in most cases the answer is absolutely no. Most deaf ASL teachers are native ASL users and have an innate knowledge of deaf culture that only can come from living as a deaf individual. It is almost impossible on every level for a hearing person to learn ASL at a latter stage in life and become equally proficient as a deaf native ASL user. There are things that a deaf person is capable of teaching in an ASL class that a hearing person simply won't be able to because of the invaluable experience the deaf person brings. Taking a course with a deaf instructor goes beyond simply learning the language. The deaf instructor is able to teach about deaf culture from personal experience, which hearing people lack in very most cases. Deaf people are also able to proficiently provide instruction in a non-manual grammatical signals, which is a vital part of the ASL grammar structure. This is something that many hearing people have trouble mastering because it is not something they grew up with. It is, however, something that most deaf people live with and use on a daily basis. It is often the case that a hearing student taking an ASL class under a deaf instructor has significantly better results in communicating with deaf people than a hearing student taking classes under a hearing instructor. Simply put, hearing ASL students receive additional benefits from taking classes under deaf instructors as opposed to hearing instructors. 2 interpreters. There are plenty of ASL job opportunities for you out there. Video relay service, interpreting in schools or colleges, community interpreting, just to name a few. Opportunities are vast for interpreting during hospital and doctor appointments, church meetings, business meetings, conferences, workshops, job training, court, and many more. If interpreting jobs are difficult to find, there are jobs in the hearing world you could take advantage of until an interpreting job comes along. There are deaf people in the deaf community that scorn the idea of hearing people teaching ASL courses. For sensitivity's sake, leave ASL teaching jobs to the deaf people. If you are currently teaching ASL courses, we ask that you respect the deaf community by discontinuing your ASL instruction and join the cause of providing opportunities to the deaf individuals. To hearing students. Believe us when we say that there are a large number of deaf people thrilled with the idea of hearing people learning ASL. Hearing people that are motivated to learn ASL is always a wonderful thing, and the deaf community will thank you for it. Because you have taken up the challenge of learning ASL, hopefully with the goal of becoming proficient if you haven't already reached proficiency, communication barriers between yourself and the deaf community will be broken. If you are taking an ASL course under a hearing instructor, it is strongly encouraged that you choose instead to take courses under a deaf instructor if you can. You will reap the rewards for doing so. In truth, if all the ASL instructors in ASL programs are hearing, there is something vastly wrong with the program. Programs like that tend to prevent deaf people from obtaining an ASL teaching job there. You'd probably be better off learning ASL elsewhere. If a program where all full-time ASL instructors are hearing and the adjunct ASL instructor are deaf, there is something wrong with that program. It is often that a full-time hearing ASL instructors are oppressed towards deaf adjunct ASL instructors and are not open to continuously learning with them, which benefits the students in their ASL courses. Decision-making in the ASL program is often made by hearing faculty or staff without regard to the valuable input the deaf instructor brings to the program. One of several cruel ironies is that hearing instructors earn more money teaching the native language of deaf adjunct instructors, even though they are consistently less qualified than their deaf peers. Meeting the diversity criteria is one reason that ASL programs often hire just 1 or 2 deaf individuals. They may meet the criteria, but their heart is quite often in the wrong places. We strongly encourage you not take ASL courses taught by full-time hearing instructors when the school is not practicing equality or embracing the deaf community. Take ASL courses taught by deaf instructors. Again, you will reap the benefits from the experience more than you realize. We would like to state, however, that taking ASL courses under hearing instructors who are children of deaf adults is acceptable within the deaf community because they are capable of sharing experiences that their parents go through as deaf citizens. With that said, it is still strongly encouraged to take courses under a deaf instructor rather than a hearing instructor for reasons already mentioned here. To the Department of Chairpersons, Program Directors, Coordinators, Academic Coordinators, and School Principals. Individuals like yourself often hire hearing individuals over deaf individuals to teach ASL courses. It is no secret that your concerns about the interpreter expenses and communication barriers between yourself and the deaf ASL instructor are factors in choosing a new ASL instructor. It is often true that it is easier for yourselves to communicate with a hearing ASL instructor because of the saved cost of not paying for an interpreter, the convenience of not having to sign yourself, or communicate by writing notes back and forth on a sheet of paper. Factoring these things in when choosing an ASL instructor is discrimination against the deaf applicant. We encourage you to consider the position of ASL instructor as a job that belongs to a deaf ASL instructor. We strongly urge you to be respectful of this sensitive issue. Having a hearing ASL instructor is equivalent to having a Caucasian teaching a course in African American studies or a male teacher teaching a course on women's studies. Who better to teach an African American course than an African American person? Who better to teach a course on women's studies than a woman? Likewise, who better to teach an ASL course than a deaf native ASL user? ASL instructors should themselves be deaf and certified with the American Sign Language Teachers Association. An important point to remember: special education and hearing and speech degrees have nothing at all to do with teaching ASL. These are entirely different fields. An individual with a degree in special education does not qualify as an ASL instructor. While the need to hire deaf ASL instructor is extremely high, we also encourage you to exercise caution when hiring deaf ASL instructors. Simply because a person is deaf and knows ASL, it doesn't automatically equate to a proficient ASL instructor. There are some deaf individuals who are not proficient in ASL or deaf culture. Some deaf instructors use signed English and/or speak English and are not fluent in ASL. Signed English and ASL are like apples and oranges, not to be confused with each other. ASL does not use spoken English. Speaking in English affects the signer by causing them to sign in English order, which is what signed English is. ASL is a true language that has every element of a language: syntax, grammatical rules and orders, etc., whereas signed English does not. If you need assistance in hiring qualified deaf ASL instructors, you may contact your local ASLTA chapter. Local ASLTA chapters can be found on the ASLTA website. They will most certainly be happy to help you with selecting qualified ASL instructors. Finally, it is important that you understand that deaf ASL instructors are bilinguals. As such, English is their second language. Do not judge them by their English skills. They are masters in ASL, their first language. Their ability to teach ASL fluently is the most important attribute of an ASL instructor. To hearing ASL professors, instructors, and teachers. For those of you who teach ASL courses full-time or part-time without a degree in ASL interpreting, deaf studies, deaf education, or without an ASLTA certificate, why are you teaching ASL? This is equivalent to stealing jobs from qualified deaf ASL instructors. You have no related degree or certificates that qualify you to teach ASL. Harsh as this may be, there are members of the deaf community that do not look kindly upon hearing people teaching ASL at all. It is our hope that you will recognize that ASL teaching jobs belong to the deaf ASL teachers. To the Department of Education of all the states, Boards of Education, and the Board of Regents. It is our hope that you are now aware that many schools across the United States do not have qualified ASL instructors in place. It is imperative that ASL programs across the country consist of qualified deaf individuals certified by the ASLTA. We would like to re-emphasize that teaching ASL and being an ASL interpreter are two entirely different things. It makes complete sense for hearing proficient ASL users to teach interpreting classes because they're qualified to do so. In summary, ASL is the language of the deaf community in the United States. Professional job opportunities are scarce for deaf people. We ask that you join us in recognizing it is high time we give ASL teaching jobs back to the deaf ASL teachers. In closing, we encourage you to share this video with students, interpreters, hearing ASL instructors, professors, hearing ASL coordinators, program directors, Department of Chairpersons, academic coordinators, principals, the State Department of Education, Board of Education, Board of Regents, colleges, the deaf community, and everyone else.